And now we're going to move over to the sewing machine. And the machine that I'm using is obviously a Brother machine. That's what we sell. This model has what's called sideways sewing. And I'm going to show you the easiest way to patch a hole in the knee of a pair of pants. And I'm going to slide off my little container here that holds my feet so that I have my free arm open. And I've created a pair of pants here because I forgot to bring a pair from home and I didn't have one with a hole in the knee. But we're going to pretend that this is a pair of pants and this is a patch. All this is a piece of heat and bond behind the fabric. And I'm going to sew, I want to zigzag around here to hold this down. Normally, in order to get to this patch, I wouldn't be able to get up far enough on the leg to get up to the knee to be able to patch it. Well, with sideways sewing, it actually means the sewing machine sews sideways, forward, sideways, and back. So I can take my pants leg and slide it right over the top of my free arm. And I line it up and I set my sewing machine for sideways sewing. And I'm going to just start right along this edge as soon as I put my glasses on so I can see. And I'm set now to zigzag sideways sewing. Well, the first thing I'm doing is I'm just going straight. So I'm going to zigzag. Oh, it helps if you put your pressure foot down. I'm going to zigzag. And I'm just going along the edge of that patch. When I get to the corner, I'm going to stop at the outside corner. And you know what? I'm doing what I need to pivot, and I'm not turning. I'm going to set my machine for sideways sewing going that way. And number 96. And so I am going to go back. I actually should have gone one stitch less. I'm going to just back up the tiniest bit so I'm right where I should be. That's what happens when you're not used to doing this. So now it's going to go sideways this way. The first time that I heard it, I thought, oh my gosh, what's that noise? It sounds kind of funny, but what it is the feed dogs are actually moving the fabric sideways. So here we go. And I may have to stop and adjust my pants a little bit. And then I keep going sideways. Obviously you wouldn't use a lime green patch with red thread, but I wanted you to be able to see what I'm doing. And now I'm going to stop here. And now I want to go backwards. And I didn't go quite to the end. I should have peeked under my foot. I should be over just a smidge yet. And now I'm going to go back the other way. It's hard to do with the camera over your shoulder and your elbow tucked underneath, but you can see what it does here. And then I can just hit my lock stitch and hit cut, raise my foot, and again, this side I could have gone out a little further. I should have lifted my foot and peeked underneath. But when your thread matches, it's an easy, quick way to put a patch on jeans. If you want to go around again, you can. And the machines allow you to do either a zigzag or a straight stitch sideways and back and forth. And the other thing that does is normally when you're doing a decorative stitch, you can only have your stitch, it's as wide as the hole in your foot. When you have a machine that has sideways sewing, you have the ability to do big wide stitches. Things like this. It's much wider than the hole in your foot, but it incorporates sideways sewing. So it actually goes like this, and it moves side to side as it sews. So I get a stitch this wide rather than just that wide. So it lets you do a lot of different stitches. This stitch, the way that it stitches, it actually uses sideways sewing, goes like this, goes back, goes over, comes down. So it's actually moving side to side as it's sewing to create, oh, and the phone is ringing. It wouldn't be a WyseGuys video without a telephone in the background. This swirly stitch, this little tulip stitch, all of these can be done on a machine that has sideways sewing, so it gets you that wide of a stitch. These look really cute when you're doing things like table runners. In the sashing, on your placemats, on your table runners, even between your blocks on your quilt. Really fun quilting using that sideways feature. So that's the easy way to patch your jeans. So the next thing we're going to talk about is how to use the blind hem function on your machine. The first thing that you do is you get out your manual. Yeah, I know a lot of you don't know where it is, but it's real easy to forget what foot to use. And your manual, if you just look up blind hem, it tells you what stitch to use and what foot to use. And when I want to overcast, it also tells me what stitch and what foot. A blind hem is the type of hem that is done usually on a pair of dress pants. I've done my samples on white with red thread so that you can see. A blind hem takes 5 stitches that you don't see and then 1 little bite to hold up your hem. So if that stitching were in white, you would never see it. On the back, you see my overcast finished edge and then my blind hem stitching. But from the front, all you see is that little bite. And it's a 2-step process. The first thing you do is overcast the edge. Well, actually, the first thing you do is measure how long you want your pants to be. And then you cut your pants off. And I typically assume a 1-inch hem. So when I cut the length of my pants, if I want a 31-inch inseam, I cut at 32, so I've got that 1 inch to turn underneath. And then I overcast the edge. The overcast keeps it from fraying and shredding. Once I've got that done, then I take my overcast edge and I iron it up 1 inch. And we're going to be doing that in a minute. And then I flip back this way, and again, we'll do this close up in a minute. And now I'm ready to sew my blind hem. So those are our 3 steps: overcast, press and fold, and stitch. So here we go. We're going to show you how to do that from scratch. So here we are. The first thing I'm going to do is overcast. And I looked in my book, and that told me to use my G foot. The G foot has a little guide here and an edge. It's kind of a funky looking foot. When I change my foot, I just push the button on the back, pop this one right up here, and I'm ready to go. And I want to use my stitch number 16. And on this machine, it tells me right here I'm at stitch 16. It also tells me to put the G foot on. So even if I remember what stitch I have, I don't have to look in the book to see what foot. And I've got just a piece of fabric here. This would normally be your pants leg, and it would roll around just like we had with the jeans, that you would have it this way. But I did this flat so you'll be able to see what I'm doing. So all I'm going to do is put my foot down, and I'm going to plant my needle. I'm going to do a little lock stitch. Lock stitch will do 3 stitches in place. If you don't have a lock stitch, you can go back and forth a little bit, but lock stitch is just a little quicker. And then all I'm doing is I'm lining up the edge of my fabric with the edge of that foot, and I'm going to stitch pretty quick so you don't have to listen to this go for a long time. And I'm going to just stop right here. You have the idea of what it's doing. No reason to watch me sew. So I cut. When I take this off, if you noticed when I put the foot up and down, it actually, the fabric is raising and lowering it with. There's a little pin there. When you take the fabric off, you have to move it backwards, because what's happening is the little pin in there is giving you space to form that stitch without getting puckers along the edge. So when you take it off, just pull it off the back, and that's what your overcast stitch looks like. So you've got a finished stitch here that holds everything in place, and this zigzag keeps anything from fraying. All right, then you're going to go, this is my pants leg. I'm going to go to my ironing board, and I'm going to use my little hot ruler. These are really handy. They call it a hot ruler, but the funny thing is they never get hot. This has got my measurements on it. I want to just fold up 1 inch, so I can pick my 1 inch line and just lay that right on there. It doesn't get hot, it doesn't burn my fingers. So I'm going to press that. So that's my 1 inch hem. Okay, and I normally would use a little bit of best press in there. These are great. These are one of our new spritzers. When you hold this down, it keeps spritzing and it gives you a really wide stream. They're really, really nice. So I get a nice crisp edge. And then, so my finish is going to look like this. Now I'm going to go back, and what I need to do is fold this piece under. So I'm going to fold it back this way so that my overcast sticks out and my fold is right along the edge of that stitching. Can you see that okay, Cheryl? And I had a pin right here. Sorry. Okay, I'm going to just put a pin in every 5 or 6 inches or so, and that's just going to hold this. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to put on my R foot, which is my rolled hem or blind hem foot. Oops, sorry. There's a blade in the middle, and again it goes back here. This is a little bar that the stitch will go over. So that's your R, your rolled hem or your blind hem foot. That's going to go on, and I'm going to set my stitch on here. It's number 36. The way that a blind hem stitch works is it's going to stitch along here. I'm going to line this up with the blade. It's going to do 4 or 5 stitches catching just this seam, and then it's going to bite over and grab that. So it's going to go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, bite, 2, 3, 4, bite, bite. And that's what causes and creates the spacing between those stitches. So it's sewing along and then it's taking a bite. Each time it takes a bite, that's what's holding your hem up. So I'm going to come over to my machine, and I'm going to take that first pin out of my way. And now I've got the blade here in the middle. I'm lining up this fold with that blade. And I'm going to do a little lock stitch if I'm right at the end. Okay, and then I'm going to just sew along, holding it, it's all pressed nice and flat. All I'm going to do is stitch. It's going to take a bite, bite, bite. Does it all by itself. Okay. And when I get to the end, again a lock stitch or a little bit of back and forth. Raise my foot, and again I'm going to just take it off the back. I didn't hit my cutter. Okay, so it looks kind of funky on the back. Again, this would all be white thread if I was hemming white pants. And then when I open it up, there are my little stitches. And those stitches are long enough that this will lay flat. There's no pucker. Because of that little bar that it bit over, it made that stitch be just a hair longer. So when I press this, I've got a beautiful flat hem. Works on skirts, works on pants. The one little trick is if you are doing a skirt or a pair of what we would have called in my day bell-bottom pants, where the bottom is wider than you're turning it up, I would just run on here. After I do my overcast, I would run just a long gathering stitch and just gather it a little bit so that when it pulls up, that curve will just pull inside and you'll get a nice crisp hem. That just shrinks that bottom edge a little bit if you happen to have a bell like on a skirt or a bell-bottom pair of pants. That's all there is to it. Anybody have any questions? Cheryl has got to be able to see that. Yeah. All right, I'm going to let you go. I hope you learned something and had a little bit of fun. I strongly suggest when somebody says, will you hem my pants? The answer is just, oh no, I'm sorry, I don't do that. It's a whole lot more fun because then you can quilt. But if you have to hem pants, that overcast stitch and the blind hem foot will really make your life easier. And we will see you tonight at 6:30 on the Facebook Live. Hope to see you then. And otherwise, we'll see you next week, Wednesday. Thanks. Bye-bye.
Bye.